Hello. Before I begin, I'd like to give you a little bit of information about myself. I am, my name is Joshua Ezell. I am 37 years old. I am a returned student after a 13-year hiatus from college. I'm going to school for engineering science currently. What discipline I'm going to pursue after my associates, I'm still not clear of. I am a freshman and have decided to go back to school to have a career change from construction, which I've been in infrastructure development for the past handful of years. And with that being said, I would like to begin my speech. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever found yourself in a situation that might look like this, where maybe you have a friend that is in a completely different kind of field of work than you. You're in one discipline, they're in another discipline. You come home, maybe you talk to your friend, and you're talking about what you do in your trade, and they're talking about what they do in their trade, and just nothing's connected, nothing's getting together, nothing's really making sense. It's almost like you're speaking two totally different languages. One speaking Sanskrit, the other speaking French, and just nothing's making sense. I certainly have this same problem myself when I communicate with my wife. I'm in one trade, which is infrastructure development and concrete and highway development. And so we have a certain linguistical aptitude in how we handle and communicate with each other. And my wife is a nurse, and within nursing, she speaks in codes and things, sort and colors and codes. So she'll come home and say something to me like, "Oh, it was a lot of red codes and blue codes, and there's three Y's, and it was a 2 red and a 6 blue." And out of best sympathy I can give my wife, I just nod my head and agree with her, because I don't really want to be rude, but actually I have no idea what it is she's talking about. So it is my goal here today to inform you about the communication issues between my discipline, what I'm going into, which is engineering. So the communication between engineers and upper management, in particular project managers, because I'm going to take a scenario. I come from infrastructure development, so we're going to discuss things, say, in a civil engineering scenario. These problems can be resolved by identifying what the business setting communication looks like in a real world scenario, and the methods of communication delivery between engineers and management. I think this has relevance to everyone, because we all have to communicate between different disciplines. Whatever trade, whatever our training is going into, there's always going to be different areas and different auxiliaries, and we're always going to find different ways in which we have to communicate, the language we use, and things of the sort. So I think this will be relevant and useful for everyone. I'm pursuing my career in engineering, so I've taken a big vested interest in this, and I hope you enjoy. So the basics of the communication process is that the communication requires a sender and a receiver, requires a medium to communicate that message, which would be an email or face to face. It could those are the two main ones. It could be in a report through a letter of some sort. It obviously requires feedback and things of the sort, and it has to have context. The context involves the time in which you communicate, the space in which you communicate, such as face to face or over your computer, and the structure in which you communicate. How you format your letter and things of the sort. Now that we've set down those basics for communication, let's take a look into the mindset of engineers and upper management. So we're going to talk about both of those right now. So both the managers and the engineers, they both have different priorities. So we're going to take a look at both viewpoints. Now, George Buckbee, in his article called "Closing the Gap Between Engineers and Management," discussed a few very important points. He said that engineers focus on details and problem solving. They like to be thorough and they like to gather their data. A quote he made was, "A challenge for engineers is to learn how to represent technical results using business metrics that align with management's ways of thinking and understanding of success." Now, managers, they want straight answers. They have 5 main things that they focus on. Managers like to focus on production, cost, quality, reliability, safety, and environment. So that's what engineers do, and that's what managers do. So let's take a look. Now we're going to take a look at things from management's point of view. Let's take a look at some of the problems that will occur, that management will find within an organization. Now, there's a few different obstacles they're going to find. There's a few problems. One's a political problem they could find. Whenever there's a lot of different groups involved, different auxiliaries and disciplines involved, there's always vested interest. Just like any sort of office culture, an office culture is going to have a different interest than what's going on in the field. And as a result of it, they'll play power games. Like, say, in the field, they're wanting so much equipment, but the office doesn't want to spend the money. They need to meet in the middle, but they need to know how to communicate those things. And sometimes they'll play things a certain way so they can get their way. And that's obviously unhealthy. Project managers need to make special efforts to be aware of the key political players in the organization. They need to know who is really discussing with who and who can understand, let's say, the trickle-down effect. Also, there's organizational cultural and office culture, things of the sort like that. They have assumptions about each other, and there's a hierarchy that's played into. There's also big linguistical factors. So there's between different disciplines, there's different language that is used. An accountant says something very different from an engineer, and an engineer talks very different from, say, a project manager. We all have our own language within our own culture, and then a subculture within that culture, and we need to be able to not make assumptions. Well, most importantly, and talk in a clear, coherent language that everyone can understand. Now, let's take a look at how we can effectively communicate to management from an engineer's point of view using a couple different mediums. So there's 3 different mediums I want to focus on today. The first is an email. Okay, if you're going to if you're going to send an email to a manager, put the subject link in the headline. Say exactly what's needed. Don't go into big details. And then per email, just make 1 point. Don't be talk about a big, broad spectrum of things. We're talking about 1 point. We're going to focus on it. Because remember, the management is focusing on their 5 points. Which those 5 points, once again, is production, cost, quality, reliability, safety, and the environment. Also, there's reports, like written reports. The first sentence of this report should state the results in economic forms. Talk about the money. Let's get right to the point. The first paragraph should state what is done and keep the request line open so we can be able to effectively communicate about the problems of what's going on. The first page should identify the 5 W's, the who, what, when, how, and why was involved. And then if applicable, involve a picture and a graph of things of the sort, so you can kind of make things a little bit more concrete what we're looking at, and it really helps them see what the cost is of things. The third method we're going to talk about is speech. There's something known as an elevator speech. An engineer really needs to practice the speech. An elevator speech is a speech that can be said within 60 to 90 seconds. It's called elevator speech because it's the amount of time it takes to ride an elevator that you can give this speech. In these speeches, you discuss 3 things: the results, the highlights of your project, and the success. No gossip. No gossip is involved within members of the organization, and do not over-explain things. You want to give your manager something calm and cool. You don't want to stress them out because they're looking at those 5 points. They don't need to know all the details. They just need to go straight to the point. What is going on? How's it cost? What's the effects? What's the safety? And how is this going to affect the environment? So it has been my goal to inform you about communication issues between engineers and upper management. These problems can be resolved. There is a problem, and we can't resolve them by identifying the business settings of communication, the real world scenario, and the methods of communication delivery. We've examined these basic communications, and we've talked about solutions for all these problems. Next time you are put in a situation where a problem seems too complex to articulate, remember there are solutions already in place. So all of us find a common ground where we can understand the issue that is at hand. There's problems, there's solutions, and the groundwork has already been made. Thank you.